This topic is really something that is close to my heart, and the space in between really was a topic that was intriguing to me when Janik first presented it to me. And I reflected on where my career has taken me as an educator over especially the last 10 or 15 years, and what the focus has been in my work, but also in my own personal journey. In between that stress, I'm somebody over the years has also experienced varying degrees of anxiety and stress from time to time, because I'm somebody who's so excited to get involved in multiple projects that it also makes my mind sometimes move a little farther ahead of me than the present moment. And that's a little bit what I want to talk about today, is how we can remain still within that space, but closer on that blissful state than the stressful state. So by definition, stress is really an expenditure of energy. And we can label it based on our experiences. Stress can be labeled as something that is positive. So perhaps a life change, it could be changing jobs, changing relationships, giving a presentation. Those could all elicit emotion of anticipation and excitement. And that's also a stress because it's an energy expenditure within the body. But also it can be connotated as negative. So there could be loss of a job, loss of a relationship, losing somebody that you care about, or any major change within life, even moving, can elicit different emotional responses within the body. And so what is this space really between stress and bliss? The question is, can we be experiencing a situation that may be to some stressful, and others it may not be stressful, but still remain grounded and centered in a blissful or happy state? Blissful being the ultimate state of happiness and expansion and openness, total freedom, excitement, really feeling that we're in our elements and in that present moment. So I reflected on this and I thought, are there moments where, because we are so intensely focused on the task at hand or living perhaps a challenging situation in life, instead of getting caught up in the emotion, because that's really what drains our vital energies, is when there's an emotion attached to that stress. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. So when I focused on, well, where is that space and can we really be living a stressful time and still be experiencing bliss? That we really have access to joy and we have access to this bliss at every moment and every day. And it's all about our perception and our awareness. And so I'd like to share a little bit of a personal story that is really close to my heart, where it was very stressful. You may relate. This past summer, about 5 months ago, in the month of June, my little granny passed on. And she was 1 week away from being 106 years old. Wow. And she was somebody who was not only my grandmother, but she was somebody who was my best friend. She was somebody who I could count on, somebody who I could talk to about anything. And she was somebody who was brutally honest with me. So if there's anything that I needed to hear, she'd make sure that she was the one to tell me, whether I liked it or not. And so in those final moments, it was a very intensely emotional time for me, obviously, because my mind, and the reason that the sadness was triggered, because sadness is also based on past memories and the memories of a lifetime spent with this person. And so these memories triggered this sadness, where then I had this moment of awareness as I went to visit her. The last 2 months of her life she spent in the hospital because her physical body just started breaking down. And instead of focusing on the sadness, she was sleeping when I walked in. And I took her hand and I just sat with her. And I allowed myself to say, Laura, you know what, just take this present moment right now, right here, and see the beauty in that. And so when she awoke, I made her comfortable. She loved warm blankets. I put a warm blanket on her and held her hand. And she was somebody who worked in beauty in her life as a hairdresser. So she asked me to put cream on her face, and she was somebody who always had to have lipstick on, even when she was in the hospital. So I made sure she had put her lipstick on and moisturized her face and her hands. And I asked her how she was. And there was a pause. And then she opened her eyes wide in that moment and looked at me and said, perfect. And my heart just extremely expanded. So this blissful state in that moment that was intensely stressful, we can say, it was also extremely blissful to have shared that really special moment with this woman who I've spent my life with. And so that was a life lesson to me, that right up until the end of her days, she's teaching me these lessons. So these moments of bliss are available to us at any time. So it's really just in becoming aware, living the present moment, and making a choice. So those are really the 3 top points that expand this space between the stress and the blissful states that we all live in on a day-to-day basis. So if you ask yourself, where is your mind right now? Maybe there's something that I said that triggered a thought for you that brought you into past thoughts of your own. Or perhaps you're thinking of what you want to do later on today. So we're often oscillating between past and future thoughts, and very rarely in being completely here in this present moment. And so the true emotion that we feel within the present moment is peace and harmony. And so we have access to that state at any moment where we feel that our minds are getting the best of us. The mind is like an untamed horse. It's galloping full speed ahead, usually most of the time. And so it's becoming aware of that. Where am I right now other than here? Besides, in the present moment, am I in past thoughts or future thoughts? And bringing yourself back. And I can use an example of every morning when I take my little dog for a walk. There's some days where I'm already thinking about the meetings that I have and conversations that I need to have, or emails that I need to send, or reports that need to be completed, and I'm really not present in that moment. Where the days where I am completely engaged in that activity of just walking my dog, I see deer on the side of the road, I see the sunset rising, I see the clouds in the sky, and I notice all the beauty around, which really elicits this feeling of expansiveness, of gratitude. And again, that's available just based on where our mind state is from one moment to the next. And when we are in these future thoughts or past thoughts, especially when there is an emotion attached, because we're often oscillating between the two, but it's when there's an emotion attached because of a past memory, if we're in a past thought and it gets us a little bit sad or anxious or stressed, or if we're already anticipating what's coming for the rest of the day, and that gets us excited, such as if you're late because you're stuck in traffic, and then you create this drama in your mind thinking, I'm going to be late for my meeting, and I'm not going to be able to get my presentation done, and my boss is going to be upset. Well, we create these emotional responses when it's not even real. We're not in that moment. So we need to sometimes bring ourselves back. So these kind of thoughts are actually very self-depleting. And when we're in this mental state, that is what drains our energy, and at the end of the day, which leaves us feeling tired and depleted and unfocused and emotional. So when we are in the state of being, then we are conserving our energy, and there's feelings of expansion, contentment, and comfort. And every single thought is registered in our biology. And it's said that we have over 65,000 thoughts in a day. And it is also said that 90% of those thoughts are the same from one day to the next because of the way we program our minds. And every thought is registered in the body. What I find really interesting, and this is a graph that comes from the HeartMath Institute in California, and we have 2 different states. So when we are experiencing emotions such as fear, sadness, worry, anxiety, depression, then our heart rate variability on the upper graph is in these spiky peaks. So the physiology of your body is actually affected. And there's a direct link to the limbic brain, which is your emotional brain. There's 40,000 neurons that connect that brain to our heart. So it's by the perception of the events that are happening that create this physiological change within the body, and this is what we see. So from time to time, that's normal. We all experience different moments where we have to be on, we have to perform. But it's through prolonged states of this kind of stress where that it imbalances us and that our homeostasis or balance is affected. And that eventually can lead to different disease states, just cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure and so on. So we have the ability to choose and to shift into a coherent mode. And here on the bottom graph, you'll see more wavy, a wavy movement of the cardiac coherence of the heart. So this happens when we're in a state of gratitude, when we're experiencing feelings of joy, of happiness, of love. So all we need to do to shift ourselves from the chaotic to the coherent state, and it's a very small shift sometimes, is becoming aware of the emotions and the response happening within the body. And all we need to do is take 2 deep abdominal breaths. And these 2 deep abdominal breaths will activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is like our physiological brake. So whereas the sympathetic nervous system is like the accelerator. So if you're driving too fast and you want to slow down, you press on the brake, right? Well, it's the same thing within our bodies. We can press on the physiological brake by just taking a moment, being present, taking 2 deep breaths, and also bringing your awareness to something that you're truly grateful for, or thinking of someone or a person or a pet that you love intensely, and notice the feelings of expansion and love move into the heart center. And so just that awareness can shift us into a chaotic to a coherent state. And so at any moment of any given day, we have that choice. And it is when we start to learn how to tame that galloping horse of our mind, taming the mind, that it can bring us into that relaxation state. And this takes practice. I'm not saying it's easy. We say that it's a simple concept, but not easy. And it requires focus on a daily basis. And so yoga is one methodology that I've practiced over the years that helps shift us into this coherent state. So which brings us from that stressful mode, which we see how it affects our physiology and our body, and brings us more into that blissful state. And this choice is available to us through breathing exercises, through practicing yoga, through qigong, through tai chi, any kind of body work. Because it's said that it is more effective to work through the body than to work through the mind. And so by doing these activities, it can help calm the physiology and calm the central nervous system. I'm studying right now with a fabulous teacher whose name is Dr. Bali. And Dr. Bali is an 88-year-old yogi who's a Vedantic scholar and has his PhD in contemporary medicine. And he's a fabulous man that I find that I'm just this little sponge when I'm around him. I just want to listen and absorb every word. But he talks about all of this and how important it is to bring ourselves into this relaxation state in as many times per day as we can. Because in doing so, our body has our own inner pharmacy to heal ourselves at all times. And so this inner pharmacy is available to heal the body, the cells, the mind, but we need to put it in that relaxation state to be able to do the work that it needs to do very naturally. So that could be, his method is by doing specific yoga poses, by doing specific breathing exercises to calm the central nervous system, to learn how to tame the mind, so that regardless of what happens in the outside world, we can still stay very centered and very relaxed in that state, so that the outside world doesn't have the same kind of an impact as it may if we're not in a relaxed state, and then we become in a reactive mode as opposed to the proactive mode. And so the space between that stress and bliss, if we were just to summarize this, is first learning how to tame the mind through practice, through developing conscious awareness, and through taking that time out as many times as you need to throughout the day too, just to tune in. And it's also about making choices. So we have the choice to either live in that stressful state or to move towards that blissful state. Just as in the example that I illustrated with my grandmother, where it was a very intense moment for me going through that transition, but I made the choice in that moment to not allow the emotions to get the best of me and to live in that moment and to fully embrace what that was. And that's something that I'll carry in my heart for the rest of my life. And so with this information and with these ideas, I extend this out to you. Then how do you choose to live in the space between stress and bliss? Thank you.